Hey guys, this is Will from the Running Injury Free Revolution. So this is the third video that in a row that I've made looking at a video of a runner. The last two runners that we've looked at, we've been looking at vertical oscillation and we've looked at braking forces. This third video we're going to be looking at the relationship between hip flexion on a runner and technique. Sort of the things that change when we increase the angle through the hip and prevent against that sort of flexion through the hip and also through the remainder of the body too. So this runner here, this is the first video at the start of the session, and this is one we made about 35 minutes later. So what you'll see straight away is the runner at the start, more so in line with a couple of the past videos, is the upper body's straight, we've got the head and hips fairly aligned, and because of that they're not creating movement forwards using their upper body. Instead, the runner's really relying on the lower body, which is causing him first of all to throw that leg forwards and hit the ground first with his heel, and you'll see that lack of alignment through the body. As a result of that, and that contact here in front of the hips, those braking forces occur and the knee bends down. So you'll see at this point, look how far the runner is bending down, and you can even see the muscles here being used in the quads, really being used to support his body. So when you draw a line at the most bent point, you can see that angle through the knees around 135, and in terms of the body we're looking around 140 degrees through the hips. So there's a high amount of hip flexion, and when you draw a line through the body it's quite a bent position, both through the knee and through the hip. So the reason why that's occurring, first of all, is that contact in front of the hip which creates that braking forces, and then they're really sinking down. And what happens is, if a runner has a high degree of hip flexion, particularly around that 140 margin, you'll see first of all their body's working really hard to support them. So you'll see the quads, you'll see the muscles being exerted in the shin and in the calf there. Also, what's also happening is, from this position where their body's sunken down, if you watch the calf here, using a lot of power to get away from the ground. And at this point, what we have is, in our body we have the hip flexors. Hip flexors provide our ability to create hip flexion, which is used for running. If when we run, our hips are flexing down, as we see here, to get away in this second phase, just think about the hip flexors here having to work really hard. So here again, when that hip flexion is significant in that bend, the hip flexors are shortened. Here we push away, they suddenly lengthen. Now that causes a huge amount of effect on a runner, gives them tight hip flexors, and where it connects on at the hip, they can even start to click with time. So that's something that's really having to work. But overall, that contact in front of the hips, the knees are bending, the hips are really sinking to that 140 degrees, and the hip flexors are then having to overwork with that position, and also the calf really having to push away. So what we wanted to do with this runner was ensure that with improved technique that they weren't having to use that added power, and that was done by reducing that level of hip flexion. So what you'll see is here, compared with at the start where that contact is made, you can see contact is being made below the hip. So whereas at the start, very upright at point of contact, you can see here at point of contact he takes on that forward leaning position. So straight away he's in that forward leaning position, aligned right from head to toe, whereas you can see here that initial point of contact, those balls aren't in line. Because of that contact in front of the hips at the start, we see those hips really flexing down, whereas now because the runner is planting below the hips, there aren't those braking forces, and because of that you'll see the hip flexion isn't really causing it to bend that far. So at its most bent, you can see that the knee is only dropping to around 145 from the 135, and you can see around 155 through the hip compared with that increased angle, which is what we saw at the start. And all that comes from preventing those breaking forces. But the best tip I can give any runner is to really focus on picking up through the base of their rib cage. So imagine where the rib cage is. What we want to think about is practice just lifting it by about a centimetre, relaxing it down, lifting it up by a centimetre and relax it down. When you relax it down, what you'll do is you'll really start to get that high level of hip flexion. Also, you'll see the knee really hyperflex because the hips and the pelvis isn't protecting against that high impact. As soon as we focus on lengthening through this area here and creating that straighter position, not only are we reducing that hip flexion, but also what's happening is we're not having to do the things that we saw on the right hand side. So you see the knees staying straighter, and also we're not having to overwork the hip flexors. So the hip flexors stay nice and long and aren't being shortened and lengthened, and instead of having to push off from sinking down really low, we can see a very natural kick occurring with the runner. So as we've talked in the last couple of videos, we're really looking at preventing against those breaking forces. So that's seeing the runners go from contacting in front of the hip to contacting level or slightly behind, which we see here with this runner. We've talked about vertical oscillation, so if we're very upright as a runner, it causes us to go up and down and waste energy not moving forwards. Whereas you'll see this runner here, every bit of energy he's using is taking him forward, and he's got a clean kick to go with that. And lastly, as we've talked in this video, really focusing on keeping nice and straight through there. We made a video about preventing against Z syndrome and preventing injuries through the hip, but from a technical perspective, what you need to practice is just lengthening from the base of the rib cage, not engaging too hard because that makes it harder to breathe, but just slightly elongating through the core, and that's going to help you to create greater length through the body and create movement from a higher position, which makes it easier from a waist down, particularly for those legs to leave the ground, and it will give you that added efficiency. So this is Will from the Running Injury Free Revolution. Please check us out at www.rifrev.com.